I was never lazy. I was trained to hesitate, to stall, to wait for the perfect moment and then miss it. Every morning, I woke up to the same voice. 5 more minutes. Start after breakfast. You're not ready yet. But that voice wasn't protecting me. It was destroying me. It was comfort dressed as logic. And I listened to it for years. Until one day I realized I wasn't tired. I wasn't broken. I was just used to losing small battles and calling that normal. That version of me had to die. So I did what most people never do. I stopped negotiating and I started moving even without motivation, especially without it. This video is not motivation. It's a mirror. I'll show you how laziness hijacks your identity and how to take it back permanently. And in the final minutes, I'll share the exact mental trigger I used to stop the cycle. Not words to repeat, but a principle to live by. The one shift that made action automatic, even when I didn't feel like it. It didn't start with full-blown laziness. It started small, quiet, just a few seconds of hesitation. I'll do it in 5 minutes. Let me just check my phone first. I'll start tomorrow when I feel more clear. But those few seconds, they grew. They became minutes, then days, then habits. And before I realized what was happening, I wasn't just postponing tasks. I was postponing my entire life. The truth is, laziness doesn't come at you screaming. It whispers. It shows up in moments that feel harmless, but they compound. And those little delays, they shape your identity. Not just what you do, but who you believe you are. I used to think I was undisciplined, that I just lacked willpower. But what I really lacked was awareness. Because I wasn't lazy by nature. I had just rehearsed hesitation so many times that it became my default. That's how it works. Every time you delay, you reinforce the belief that it's okay to avoid, that you'll get away with it, that it's not a big deal. But your brain doesn't forget. Every hesitation sends a message. I don't move when it matters. And eventually, you start to believe that's just who you are. That's what happened to me. At first, I blamed the external. Too tired, too busy, not the right time. But deep down, I knew I was negotiating with myself because it was easier than facing what mattered. I had become skilled at avoiding discomfort. So skilled, in fact, that I could sabotage a productive day without even realizing it. But there was one moment, one morning, that everything clicked. I had a long list of things to do, and I sat on my bed, phone in hand, telling myself I'd start in a few minutes. But instead, I opened the Notes app and wrote one sentence. I'm not tired. I'm just afraid of effort. And that hit me, because it was true. The real issue wasn't fatigue. It was fear. Fear of discomfort. Fear of pressure. Fear of failing even if I tried. I had trained my mind to avoid the very thing that would make me stronger. So I made a rule, one I still use today. No thinking, just move. Not because I felt like it, not because I was inspired, but because I refused to let hesitation have another vote. The first time I used it, it was messy. I wanted to quit halfway, but I kept going, not for results, but to prove to myself that I could act without permission from my feelings. That's the shift. You don't kill laziness by yelling at yourself. You kill it by acting before the lazy voice gets the mic. You kill it by not making it a debate. If it needs to be done, you move. No extra dialogue. No negotiation. It's uncomfortable at first. But the more you do it, the more your brain starts to trust you again. That's when things change. Because laziness isn't just about time. It's about trust. Can you trust yourself to follow through? Or will you break the promise again? When I realized I'd been breaking tiny promises to myself all day, every day, I finally understood why my confidence was gone. Discipline isn't built in big moments. It's built in those invisible seconds between the thought and the action. That's where the war is, and that's where you win. Start by catching that hesitation. The next time you say in a minute, stop. Catch it, challenge it, then move. Don't wait to feel ready. That's the lie. You move to become ready. You don't overcome laziness by waiting for motivation. You overcome it by becoming the kind of person who doesn't wait anymore. And that identity, It's forged in movement, in motion, in proof. So start now. And if what I'm saying is hitting you in the gut, if you know you've been living in hesitation too long, then this is the moment to draw a line. Make that rule yours. No thinking, just move. And if this message resonates with the battle you're in, subscribe now, not for me, but to remind yourself you're done living on pause. You're building momentum, and it starts today. Because in the next step, I'll show you the real reason discipline breaks, even when motivation is high. And once you see it, you'll understand why you've been stuck far longer than you thought. For a long time, I believed motivation was the missing piece. I'd scroll through videos waiting for that perfect line, the one that would finally flip a switch in me. And sometimes it worked for a few hours, maybe even a whole day. But by the next morning, I was back at zero, staring at my to-do list like it was a mountain, telling myself I'd start once I felt in the zone again. And that's when I realized motivation is not a fuel, it's a spark. It lights up fast, but it burns out faster. If you build your life around motivation, you build your habits on something you can't control. And every time it disappears, so does your momentum. That's why I kept failing. Not because I was lazy by nature, but because I was depending on feeling ready to act. And let me tell you something that changed everything for me. Discipline doesn't wait for motivation. It replaces it. Once I understood that, I stopped trying to chase energy. Instead, I started chasing structure. Because structure shows up even when I don't feel like it. Structure doesn't ask how I'm feeling. It tells me what to do. And I follow through because that's who I am now. But that shift took more than a mindset change. It took honesty. I had to admit that I was addicted to the idea of feeling inspired. It made me feel special. It gave me a rush, but also made me a slave to my emotions. I had to let that version of myself die. The one that only moved when it was convenient. The one that mistook emotional spikes for personal growth. Growth isn't a feeling, it's a pattern. And that pattern has to be built before you feel like it, not after. So I made a rule. I show up, no matter how I feel. I don't wait for the spark. I create it through action. There were days it felt robotic, mechanical, even empty. But what I didn't realize at first was that every action I took without motivation was a message to my brain. You can count on me. And slowly, that voice inside me, the one always looking for an excuse, got quieter. That's what real momentum feels like. It doesn't come from hype. It comes from trust. And trust is built when you do what you said you'd do, especially when it's hard. So ask yourself, how many days have you lost waiting to feel like it? How many opportunities did you let slide because the spark didn't come? How much of your life are you putting on hold for an emotion that never promised to stay? I had to face those questions, and the answers hurt. But they also gave me power because once I took responsibility, I took control. Motivation is a gift. If it comes, use it, but don't depend on it. Build your life on something stronger. Build it on structure, on commitment, on identity. Because the moment you stop waiting and start acting, you stop being the person who hopes for change and become the person who creates it. You kill laziness not by yelling louder, but by making action so normal that laziness doesn't get a seat at the table anymore. So here's what I want you to try. Tomorrow morning, before you check your phone, before your thoughts start racing, do one action immediately. No debate, no plan. Just move. Let your body lead, and your mind will catch up. Most people don't even realize it's not their willpower that's breaking. It's what surrounds them, silently stealing their momentum. And once you see that, you'll stop blaming yourself for a war you didn't know you were walking into. I used to think laziness was something that lived inside me, like a flaw, something I had to fight every single day, just me against my own mind. But I was wrong. It wasn't just internal. It was all around me. It was in my bedroom, cluttered, chaotic, a constant invitation to stay in bed. It was in my phone, filled with endless scrolling, dopamine loops, and 1,000 easy ways to avoid doing anything meaningful. It was in the people I followed online, those who made comfort look like the goal. And I didn't even notice it because it felt normal. That's what makes environments so dangerous. It doesn't yell. It whispers. It nudges you quietly into patterns of distraction and makes them feel like your own choices. But they're not. You can't kill laziness while surrounded by triggers that reward inaction. I remember the day I saw it clearly. I'd set a goal. Wake up early, get moving, no excuses. But the moment I opened my eyes, my hand reached for the phone. Not because I needed it, but because it was there. One small decision, one small scroll, and just like that, the morning was gone. And I kept doing this, over and over, thinking I lacked discipline, when in reality, I had just built my life to reward passivity. Everything around me was optimized for comfort, not for action. Your environment shapes your identity faster than your intentions ever will. Because it doesn't ask you to think, it just reinforces who you've always been. You say you want to change, but the question is, have you made it easy to stay the same? I hadn't. My space, my apps, my habits, all of them made laziness feel like the default. So I started to change that, not with a massive overhaul, just with small, clear shifts that sent a new message to my brain. I deleted the apps that stole my mornings, moved my phone across the room, laid out my clothes the night before, cleared the visual clutter that made my space feel heavy. None of that sounds heroic, but it worked because it removed friction from action and added friction to avoidance. The lazy voice still whispered, but it had fewer tools to win. That's when I realized something critical. Laziness isn't just a behavior. It's an environment you've adapted to. You're not just fighting your own mind. You're fighting every system you've set up that makes comfort easier than courage. So here's a question I had to face, and I want you to face it too. What in your environment is feeding the version of you you're trying to leave behind? What's keeping you comfortable when you need to be uncomfortable to grow? Pause right now. Think about it. And if you're willing, drop one answer in the comments. One thing in your environment, digital or physical, that you know is holding you back. Naming it is the first strike. Changing it is the kill shot. And if this hits close to home, don't scroll past it like another video. This is your interruption, the one your routine won't give you. Start designing an environment that respects your goals, not one that tolerates your excuses. Because when your space aligns with your identity, laziness has no safe place to hide. And once that happens, you'll notice something strange. You'll start acting without overthinking. Not because it's easier, but because it finally makes sense. And the next time you fail to follow through, it won't be because you're lazy. It'll be because you let your surroundings dictate your standards. You're stronger than that. And soon, I'll show you how I stopped restarting over and over again and built momentum that actually stayed. There was a sentence I used to repeat all the time, and I didn't realize how toxic it was until it nearly ruined everything. I'll get serious soon. Not today, not now, but soon, when things calm down, when I feel more stable, when I'm finally in the right headspace. That lie became my comfort blanket. It made me feel safe, like I had time. But what it really did was keep me frozen in place, with the illusion that I was still moving forward. Because saying soon feels like a plan, but it's not. It's a delay dressed up as strategy. And I said it to myself so many times. I started to believe it. I convinced myself that I was just in a phase, that I was about to get back on track. But nothing ever changed, because I never had to face the truth. I wasn't waiting for the right time. I was avoiding the real work, the hard decisions, the uncomfortable changes, the part where I'd have to choose between who I wanted to become and the lazy version of me I kept protecting. I used to open my laptop with the best intentions, only to find myself watching videos, reorganizing folders, convincing myself I was being productive. I wasn't. I was hiding. And the worst part? I knew it. But I told myself, it's fine. I'll go harder tomorrow. But tomorrow is just another version of now, unless you make a decision that breaks the pattern. So one night, I grabbed a pen and wrote this in big, angry letters. There is no later. There's only lost time. That hit me like a punch to the chest, because I realized something brutal. I wasn't lazy because I lacked motivation. I was lazy because I kept lying to myself. I used kindness as a mask for avoidance. I called it self-care, but it was self-sabotage. And the only way I started to change was I got honest, painfully honest, about the cost of delay. Every time I said later, I lost another opportunity to build trust with myself. Another chance to become the version of me I kept imagining. The future wasn't the problem. It was my attachment to the illusion that the future would fix what I refused to face today. So I made a rule, not a motivational quote. A real, no excuse rule. If I don't act now, I lose permission to complain later. That rule shut down the lazy voice fast, because suddenly the cost was real. If I wanted progress, I had to earn it in the present, not wish for it in the future. So I'll ask you something. What lie are you still telling yourself? What excuse sounds reasonable, but keeps you stuck? Is it time? Energy? Overwhelm? Perfectionism? Or maybe, like me, you're just afraid to fail again. Because if you really try this time and still fall short, then what? But here's what I discovered. The only thing worse than failing is watching yourself never try. That slow self-betrayal hurts more than any disappointment ever could. So stop negotiating with your laziness through comfort phrases. Rip the bandage. Say it out loud. I've been lying to myself and I'm done. That sentence changed me. It woke something up, because once I said it, I couldn't unhear it. And every time the lazy voice came back, I had a response waiting. I know who I am, and I don't lie to myself anymore. Say that to yourself now. Let it cut. Let it sting. Because honesty is the start of momentum, and clarity is the end of excuses. And soon, I'll show you the moment that finally broke the cycle. Not with motivation, but with a decision I never walked back from. There's always that one day, the one you look back on and say, that's when everything shifted. Not because life suddenly got easier, not because I found the perfect routine, but because I got tired of hearing my own excuses. That morning was nothing special. No motivation, no epiphany, just me sitting at the edge of my bed, feeling the weight of all the promises I'd broken with myself. I had this list of things I wanted to do. Simple things. Wake up early. Write for 30 minutes. Go to the gym. Nothing extreme. But I hadn't done any of it. Again. And in that moment, I felt something shift, not in my mood, but in my tolerance. I was done tolerating the gap between what I said I wanted and how I was actually living. So I stood up, not because I felt like it, but because I was done asking myself if I was ready. That question, am I ready, had stolen too much from me. It had become my favorite way to avoid growth. Because if you need permission to move, you'll always find a reason to stay still. And that morning, for the first time, I gave myself a new rule, one that changed everything. You don't move because you feel like it. You move because you said you would. That sentence hit hard. It was a confrontation, a moment of truth where I stopped treating discipline like a mood and started treating it like a promise. From that day forward, every time I felt the lazy voice rise up, I answered with action, even if it was small, even if it was sloppy, even if it made no visible progress, because it wasn't about results anymore. It was about alignment. I wanted to become someone I could trust. And trust doesn't come from saying the right thing. It comes from doing it, especially when it's inconvenient. I didn't wait for the right playlist. I didn't scroll for inspiration. I didn't sit in silence hoping for clarity. I moved, one task, then another, and for the first time, I wasn't negotiating with myself anymore. I wasn't checking in with my feelings before every decision. Because here's the truth. Your laziness isn't waiting to be conquered. It's waiting for you to stop asking for its approval. The moment I stopped looking for perfect conditions and just followed through with what I had, I started stacking evidence, real, tangible proof, that I was changing. It wasn't overnight. There were slip-ups, days I almost fell back into comfort, but I had crossed a line, one I refused to go back over. That's the day I realized discipline isn't something you build. It's something you protect. Because once you get a glimpse of who you could be without all the hesitation, you'll fight like hell to never lose that version again. And I want you to feel that too. Not just watch a video and get fired up. I want you to draw your own line. The one you don't step back over. The one that says, from here on out, I move. No matter what. So let me ask you something. What would happen if, for the next 7 days, you stopped asking for permission and just executed? No pep talks. No emotional check-ins. Just movement. Real, consistent, brutal movement. That's where the shift begins. Not in thought, but in action. Because in the next step, I'll show you how to reinforce this new version of you before the old one tries to crawl back in. Here's the hard part no one tells you. Once you start killing your laziness, it doesn't just die quietly. It fights back, not as chaos, but as comfort. The moment you start changing everything, and you'll try to pull you back to familiar. You'll wake up earlier for 3 days, and on the 4th, your mind will whisper, "You've been good. You deserve a break." You'll move fast for a week, and then suddenly you'll feel drained, confused, doubtful. And if you're not prepared, you'll call that crash a failure. But it's not. It's just the old you testing your commitment. Because transformation isn't about momentum, it's about memory. And your brain remembers every version of you that hesitated, delayed, and retreated. That's why discipline fades. Not because you're weak, but because you didn't protect what you built. I learned that the hard way. The first time I built real consistency, I felt powerful, unstoppable. I was moving, deciding fast, getting things done before the excuses showed up. But 2 weeks in, something shifted. I got cocky. I relaxed my rules. I told myself, I've earned a day off. That one day turned into 3, then 5. And before I knew it, I was right back in the same cycle, negotiating with my goals, believing my own delays, convincing myself I hadn't really lost progress. But I had, because every time you let the old identity speak again, you give it oxygen. That's when I learned the most important lesson in all of this. You don't just build discipline, you defend it daily. No exceptions, no emotional loopholes. No, just this once. Because the second you make discipline optional, you've already lost the fight. I had to create a system, a set of non-negotiables, not based on how I felt, but based on who I wanted to be. I started asking one question every morning. What would the focused version of me do right now? And I followed it, blindly, even when I felt off, overwhelmed, or uninspired. Because I knew that clarity would come through action. And the more I acted like the new me, the more the old one disappeared. I started creating tiny rituals that reminded me, you've changed. I cleaned my desk. I set time blocks. I pre-wrote my priorities the night before. Nothing revolutionary, but each step became a layer of armor. That's what most people miss. They think transformation is about motivation, but it's really about environment plus repetition plus identity. And if you don't protect that identity, the world will give you 1,000 reasons to return to who you used to be. Comfort, comparison, fatigue, distraction, and all of it will feel justifiable. That's why you need to be ruthless. Not aggressive, but committed. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's necessary. So here's what I did. I made a contract with myself. I wrote it down. From this day forward, I don't move based on how I feel. I move based on who I've decided to become. That became my anchor. Every time the lazy voice tried to sneak in, I had a response ready. I've already decided who I am, and this version doesn't stall. It wasn't perfect. I slipped. I had moments of weakness, but I never stayed down for long because I had proof. Proof that I was no longer the person who gave up at the first sign of discomfort. Proof that I could act without inspiration. Proof that I could trust myself. That's what you're building now. Not just momentum, but memory. Not just goals, but identity. You're not killing laziness for a week. You're burying it for good. But to keep it dead, you have to guard the gate. Because in the final step, I'll share the words I use to shut down that lazy voice. Every time it tries to come back. Not motivation, not hype, just a truth that doesn't flinch. even on your worst days. Laziness doesn't vanish. It evolves. It gets quieter, more subtle. It shows up as logic, as reason, as care. But you know better now. You've seen what it really is. A rehearsed voice, a practiced identity, a script you've played for years, that you never chose, you just repeated. But now you choose. Now you've stopped negotiating. Now you've started moving. And the most dangerous thing you can do now is forget how far you've come. Because that old version of you, it's not gone. It's waiting for you to get tired, to get distracted, to slip back into comfort. So you need a response, not to inspire you, but to shut it down. And here's mine, the one I promised you. I'm not here to feel ready. I'm here to act, no matter what. That's it. Every time the lazy voice shows up, every time it whispers, later, not now, I say that to myself, and then I move. Immediately. No second thoughts. Because that's the line. That's the moment of choice. And if you don't answer it with action, you let the old self speak again. But now you know how to kill it. Every time. Not with shouting. Not with guilt. But with truth. I'm not here to feel ready. I'm here to act, no matter what. Say it. Own it. Move with it. You've earned that version of yourself. The one who follows through. The one who's rebuilding trust. Decision by decision. Movement by movement. No more waiting. No more soon. No more lies. From now on, laziness doesn't get a voice. You do. And if this resonated with you, if it lit something up inside you, even just a spark, subscribe now. Not to follow me, but to stay connected to the new you. The version that doesn't flinch. The version that moves, even when it's hard. Because this is just the start. If you want to make sure the old version of you stays dead, watch the next video. It's exactly what you need to reinforce everything you just built before it slips away.